here today to answer a few of the frequently asked questions that I get on the channel, and through emails and private messages. There are lots of people that apparently don't want anything they write public, so we'll kind of address this. This is a question that I get asked a lot, and it really pertains to horses that have had previous rough handling. They've maybe had their mouths kind of brutalized, and they've got excessive mouthing of the bit, or maybe they want to put their tongue over the bit. And I've had this question many times. So here's what I would do in a case like that. Okay. Probably step one for me would be just to put the horse in a round pen, no saddle, no nothing. Get a pretty typical sort of a snaffle and just hang it in the horse's mouth on the thong. I've got one of those that I used to start all colts in, and I would just put that bit in the horse's mouth. I would have it adjusted a little bit low and leave him alone. I'd go ride another horse or something, come back in an hour, and let's see what we've got. Lots of horses, even the ones that want to put their tongue over the bit and all, when you give them that time left alone, they'll learn to pick it up and hold it properly. Some won't. Okay, so if that doesn't work, and what I'm basically trying to do there is we're talking about a horse that has been handled poorly or possibly even abused. We're trying to take the human factor out of there. So when you have a horse that's been handled very poorly, well, anytime there's a person in the mix, that's going to bring about anxiety, and we need a starting point. So if I can get that horse just to pick the bit up and hold it, now I've got a starting point. If I have a horse that really strongly wants to put their tongue over the top of the bit, very simple little thing that I've done, and I almost can't believe that it has worked, but it has with multiple horses. Just to stand there with the horse and put your finger in his mouth and pick the bit up and put it back with his tongue underneath it, and sit there, and you may do that 24 times, and you'll find that as you do it, he'll hold it that way a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer, until they'll start holding it. And again, that's really all that you need. Now let me address one other thing here. I keep talking about the bit hanging a little bit low. That is because we almost want it to annoy the horse a little bit, where they pick it up and hold it just to keep it from being in that annoying position. That's really more the ounce of prevention, not the pound of cure. And so for a horse that does have a history and some baggage with a bit, that's not always going to work. Another thing that I will see sometimes and get asked about is the old horse that's been ridden for a dozen years with 2 wrinkles in his mouth, and then they try to drop the bit down. If they've been ridden a long time like that, then likely that is going to be their preferred position for the bit. And if they're okay with it, I mean, it's not ideal. I have definite reasons, I hope you've seen in the other videos, why I don't like that. But if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I would rather start a horse from scratch, having them pick the bit up. I think that's a much more advantageous position for us to be in with the horse. But if they've been habituated with a different type of a mouth habit, then you're likely to cause more problem trying to go against that. So you can, if they don't like it low, don't put it low. I'm not saying it has to go that way. So back to tongue over the bit. If simply picking that up and putting it on top of the tongue doesn't work, or let's say that you have that horse that's got the anxious mouth that likes to excessively mouth on the bit, at that point I will go to a lifesaver type snaffle, or maybe even a dog bone that's got a copper roller on it, that sort of thing. And the copper is going to salivate a bit more, and horses will tend to want to play with the roller a little bit, and so that's a little bit more motivation for them to keep their tongue underneath that bit and deal with it. I'll say that I'm not a real fan of starting a horse in a bit that has a lot of excessive roller type stuff on it for them to play with. I have found that some horses that I don't think ordinarily would be mouthy will sort of develop an oral fixation with a bit like that. So like, it's like chewing gum or a toothpick or something. They'll just want to play with it. So I'd rather avoid having that if I can, and that's why I stay with the simplest thing that I can stay with. But if I have the problem that a horse is excessively mouthy, a bit that gives him a little something he can play with that internally, and outwardly we won't see as much busyness in his mouth. All of those things being said, the most important thing with the horse is that your hands and your methodology of holding the handling the reins and the pressure that you put on him and all is consistent and fair. Most people have very monotone hands. What I like to think of as having good hands is sort of playing the hot or cold game with your horse. So if they're rooting their nose out on me, or the head's coming up or going too low, or going wherever I don't want it to be, I'm going to get firmer on the reins because they're getting colder. And then as they come into the position that I want them in, I'm going to lighten up on the reins and they're getting warmer. So it gives them a pretty elastic sort of a contact where there's no question of where I'm asking for that horse's head to be. It makes it very fair and very obvious where the correct answer is, and allows that horse to feel like he can choose. I'm not going to crucify him for being in the wrong place, but I'm going to harass him for being there. And so it's his choice to either be harassed or get where he's supposed to be. And just keeping it very fair and not monotone. That gives the horse the motivation to get softer and yield and be accepting of bit contact. Horses that have mouth vices are almost always made. They're not started. I don't ever see that in my colts that I'm starting. You only see that in horses that have had previous poor riding done on them. Or let me not say always, but the vast majority of the time. So playing that hotter, colder game, being really fair with the horse. Let me have one caveat here. I won't say that every horse's mouth is salvageable. Some horses have been so soured to, let's say they were ridden in a double jointed bit and with really, really heavy hands for a prolonged period of time. That might be a horse that is never going to be okay with a tongue pressure bit. Or likewise, we may have a horse that has had a bar pressure bit used excessively, and they're never going to be okay with bar pressure. So there may be some playing around of different mouth styles that you're going to need to do in order to find something that horse is accepting of, and he may never get where he's going to be accepting of the tongue pressure, or whatever that particular thing was for him.